Greetings, my friends. Reformed Stoic here. So, we're just going to go ahead and walk around a little bit for this video. I'll just get some lights on, try to get some decent lighting. Just do it a little bit differently. Maybe this will help the flow of consciousness a little bit. I've been thinking about making this video for a while now. And just want to make sure that it flows. Don't put too much pressure on myself. I have a number of different things I wanted to say here, but the main goal of this video is for it to be informative, for it to help people. That's ultimately the purpose of my channel. So, no FAP, masturbation, pornography. Let's get down to it. I wanted to start with just a couple of thoughts I had kind of relating other things to this. First of all, it reminds me of in drumming, when I came across a method of practice involving, you know, everybody plays to a metronome for the most part, especially drummers. It's good for your timing. It's the little thing that goes click in perfect time. Now, most people, when they play along to it, they just put it on the quarter note. You wouldn't really think to do anything else. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're playing in 4/4. But I came across a drummer who recommended that you put the metronome on the last 16th note. So that would be like 1 E and 2 E and 3 and 4 E and then you play along to that. 1 E and 2 E and 2 da do do da do da do do da. And when I first tried to do that, it was really weird. It's going to be very challenging for you if that's something you've never tried to do. And I very quickly gave up. I very quickly gave up on it and said, you know what? This is weird. It's probably not that important. I'll just focus on other things. Like, there's all kinds of drummers who don't do this. This is probably not necessary. But then I stumbled across that technique again 2 years later and said, you know what? This is necessary for my growth to improve my timing. So let's go ahead and push through this time. And ultimately I was more developed and I was more ready for it. But of course, looking back, seeing how monumental that was for my timing when I started doing that, it was like, gosh, I wish I would have just done this a long time ago, because that's the next level. You know, you get to the gate of this next level and it's really hard to pass that gate. So you give up. But ultimately, when you level up and grow, you go back to that same gate. So that's the first one. And then the next one's a little bit goofier. I don't know if you're familiar with Final Fantasy VII. I've been watching this guy who runs Final Fantasy VII all the time. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming out. That's the second installment in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's something called the Midgar Zolom, which is like this big black snake that's in the swamp in Midgar before you can go into this cave. At first, if you're doing a standard playthrough of the game, you want to get a chocobo so you can run really fast through the water and avoid that boss battle. But then later in the game, after you level grind, usually when I get into that cave, I do a level grind. I level up pretty high and get all my limit breaks and everything. Then after you're all leveled up, if you want, you can go back and you can just go fight that boss that you had to avoid before. So, just figured I'd share that with you to get warmed up. No FAP is it. It is the highest challenge that I believe that there is. And I have come to this rite of passage many times and turned back many times. You try to talk yourself up, you try to make your life built around it, and you give all these speeches and you do all these things to express how dedicated you are and how important it is to you. And it just sends you packing. It has sent me packing many times. I can basically count the number of significant streaks that I've had on one hand. I believe the biggest streak I ever had was about 10 days. It was 9 or 10 days when I was going to UNLV in Vegas. Then another time in Vegas, I read the ebook, the PMO manual or something. It's some popular ebook that just tells you about how horrible pornography is for you and guides you through a method of quitting. Oh, the easy peasy method. That's what it's called. The easy peasy method. I read that. I think I lasted a week, and then I caved without looking at anything. And then I tried to go for another week. I lasted like another 5 days after that, and then I just gave up. I actually deleted. This is why later on I would go on to smash a hard drive that I had, because I deleted everything I had on this hard drive, my stash. And then randomly, when I was like 5 days into the second attempt, I was just like, oh, I think I can just use a file recovery program to get everything back. And that's what I ended up doing. So there was the 10 days, then that was like a 7-day, and then a 5-day. And then I gave up for a long time after that. And so then there was one time here where I lasted 6 days. And I remember being very depressed. What happens, lesson number 1 here, guys, as I rant along. My experience was that you get really depressed when you fail after a streak. You get really depressed when you fail after a streak. And then on top of that, the day after you fall off, I've always felt like it was really hard to have an immediate turnaround. So this is a good opportunity to introduce the system that I've come up with here. The 3 T's: turnaround, timing, and triggers. So turnaround, I've found, is the most important, because for all of my streaks in the past, I was not able to have good turnaround, which is how long does it take you to get back on the horse. I find when you get your turnaround down to basically where you never masturbate 2 days in a row, which for me was just quite simply not a thing. And then triggers is, unfollow all the ladies on Instagram that you don't know, that aren't your family or people that you actually talk to. Who knows? It could be a friend. It could be a friend that posts promiscuous things. You might need to unfollow her. Get rid of the triggers, okay? That's something that you'll use as an excuse. It's like, oh, well, I'll be doing so good, and then somebody pops up in my feed on Instagram or Facebook. I mean, a lot of people, you might just want to get rid of Instagram or get rid of Facebook. I just recently got rid of my normie Facebook. I got rid of my normie Instagram a couple of months ago. There's no more Jake Shields on social media. If anybody wants to get in contact with me, I'm the Reformed Stoic. That's all that's left. Jacob Shields. That's an interesting rabbit hole of my life, is that I always kind of treated Jake and Jacob like they're the same name. And I always wanted to be called Jake and not Jacob. But really, Jacob is a biblical name. And that was the name that was actually given to me. And for some reason, I thought that name sounded lame and I wanted to be Jake. But Jacob is biblical and Jake is not. And I think that they're different names. Interesting fact. But, Jacob Shields is a very isolated man at this point who is on a spiritual path. And he doesn't have social media. But Reformed Stoic, trademark, TM, it's official, it's been official, does. So anyway, I digress. Turnaround is going to be hard to develop. The only way I could get to a point where I am now, which is I have not masturbated 2 days in a row since January 15th. So that's been going for a pretty long time for me. You need to just make a decision that you're going to stick with NoFap. And, you know, even when you fail, you keep going. And hopefully that takes you to a point where you eventually never masturbate 2 days in a row. That took me like 3 or 4 months, and my faith has been a big part of that. I've been going to confession once a month. I confess for all my masturbation. Now, in terms of Catholicism, you're not supposed to take the Eucharist if you have mortal sin. Mortal sin is the kind of sin where if you die without confessing your mortal sins, the majority of Catholics believe that means that you're dying out of a state of grace and that you're going to go to hell. So a lot of the point of being a Catholic is to make sure that you die in a state of grace. When you confess all of your mortal sins, you go back to a state of grace. Now, the encyclicals say that for something to be a mortal sin, it has to be of a grave nature, and you have to will to it. You have to fully consent to it. There's one more factor that I'm kind of brain farting on, but in terms of masturbation, it says that you can be driven to it through addiction or, you know, passion, fire. Like, you can't really control it. It basically becomes like an addiction. There's all kinds of Catholics out there who love to put their foot down and say masturbation is a mortal sin. End of discussion. Do not take the Eucharist. If you've masturbated, and you'll find some priests who say that too. But this is something that I've been doing a lot of personal research because I'm taking my faith very seriously. And I would say that more often than not, masturbation is not a mortal sin, especially in the times we're living in. And to make sure that it's not, you need to make this decision to cut it out of your life. You need to try. You need to be trying, okay? We're talking about, like, are you consenting even though you're doing it? If you're constantly working on a streak and you're disappointed when you cave, it's safe to say that you didn't want to do it, okay? I've been in a place lately where I'm trying to stop entirely. I haven't masturbated for 2 days in a row since January 15th. And, you know, it definitely, I have the best argument you could possibly have that I'm not fully consenting to it. What consenting to it would look like for me at this point is like, you know what, let's just not worry about this for a while. Let's just go back to every day. Let's just go back to doing it every day, which I've done a number of times. I think it's safe to say that the kind of masturbation habits that I've had for the majority of my life would fall under the category of mortal sin. And living in sin is serious business. So I was kind of just going over the streaks that I'd had in the past. I left off, I had a 6-day streak here, and I felt like really depressed after I fell off of that. And then a landmark, something that's like landmarked by the podcast I made about semen retention. In fact, I think that was one of my last 4 or 5 podcasts. That was a 4-day streak, and I was very depressed after, you know, for like a day. The day that you fall off, you feel pretty depressed. There was that one, and I didn't try again until these basically last 3 or 4 months, where I've been like talking to my priest and just kind of came up with a plan. I tried a number of different things. Like a guy in a Reddit post, he was saying that you get to a point where, you know, you do it once a day, every day, and then don't do it on Monday, and then do it once a day for the rest of the week, and then don't do it on Monday and Tuesday. And then you kind of just weed it out one day at a time like that. I tried that, and it didn't work. It was too organized, because, you know, like, it's kind of like random when you fall off. Maybe there's a day that you would have been able to go without. It's like, oh, well, you know, this week I'm able to masturbate once a day this entire week. that's kind of like weird. You're giving yourself consent on days when maybe you could have gone without, and then you're going to have a hard day on some of the days that you're supposed to go without. So I found that that wasn't really a good way to do it. I haven't been keeping tally or anything, but I have a good memory for this kind of stuff. For these last 4 months, I've just kind of kept an idea of a ballpark of what kind of progress I've made. It's like, okay, the first month, I was able to like go without a day here, go without a day there. Maybe I got like 1-2 day streak. Then the next month, it was like, okay, now it's getting to a point where I'm missing a couple of days every week. And then the next month, it was like, okay, now I got a 2-day streak. Now I'm getting to a point where like every couple of days I go without. Just a little bit of progress, you know, even if like maybe there was a month when I ended up doing it more times the following month, but I had some sort of argument for progress. It's like, okay, I probably masturbated less times the previous month, but I got a 4-day streak this month for the first time. So my biggest streak was bigger this time. Something. You need something. That's what I've kind of been saying, is like I need something to bring into confession, because I kind of explained to my priest, it's like, yeah, I'm still masturbating, but I truly believe that I've been making progress. And now that led to January, where I kind of backslid for the first 15 days, went back to doing it every day. But now it's gotten to a point where I have immediate turnarounds, and even though I've yet to see a streak that's bigger than 4 days, but now I've seen 2 4-day streaks in the last 2 months, a 3-day streak, lots of 2-day streaks, lots of 1 day on, 1 day off. Like I said, the turnaround has always been immediate. And by the way, I fell off yesterday, and once again, now it's not going to feel good if I do for 2 days in a row. So at this point, you know, another tip is like, don't beat yourself up too bad when you fall off, you know, just calm down, get right back on the horse. I have kind of mixed feelings about, like, you know, make sure it's only once the days that you fall off. That's not how I've been doing it. The days that I fall off, I've fallen off pretty hard. I guess you could just say to just get it out of your system, to just make sure that you're ready to go the next day. But of the 3 T's, turnaround, triggers, and time of day, which I haven't really explained yet, it's like there's probably a certain period throughout the day where you're most likely to fail. So just be very aware of that, and then try to figure out ways to kind of like counteract that. For me, video games is proving to be very valuable, which is interesting because a lot of people like talk bad about video games. Bottom line is, it's not a sin. I mean, if all you do is play video games, then it could be seen as sloth, I suppose. But for me, I pretty much treat it like medicine. I'm trying to make sure I play some video games like at least 20 minutes a day, 20-30 minutes. I'm watching a lot of video games too. I like watching people do speed runs and stuff. But yeah, figure out how to like make sure to keep your hands busy. I found that because, you know, maybe a lot of you guys already play video games or something, you need something else. If there's just something that you used to do that you don't do anymore, pick something back up. Like, pick an old hobby back up. Maybe something that you used to love when you were a kid that you don't do anymore. You know, I don't know, tennis or whatever, something. Just get a new hobby. If not that, just get a new hobby, get something to occupy your hands, come up with some strategies in that time of day. Because for me, it's like, you know, it really isn't an issue in the morning, and it's not really an issue at night. It's right after my workout for the next 3 hours or so, 3-4 hours till about 10-11 p.m. Usually when I've made it that far, I'm good to go. Okay, so turnaround, I think, there's not really a most important of any of those. I mean, triggers is kind of a no-brainer. Whatever is making, like, women pop up on your screen, that tempts you, you got to get rid of that. You might need to get rid of social media altogether. At least unfollow all the ladies of the evening that pop up. 4chan is a big one. You can really just bump into stuff at 4chan at any given moment. Maybe disable HTML or something, or disable the pictures. Time of day, just strategize around the time of day. But if there is, most important, I would say it's turnaround. Like, even though I haven't made a streak bigger than 4 days yet, that's basically where I am right now. Is like, okay, let's go back and break my old record. It's time. Because one more time, I have not masturbated for 2 consecutive days since January 15th. And that's huge for me. So in summary for the strategy, any kind of progress, like a less organized version of the, okay, remove Monday, then remove Tuesday, then remove Wednesday, that's too organized. That's giving you permission on days when you could have went without, and then screwing up on days because it's just too weird. So if you want to keep track, literally account for how many times you've masturbated in the month, and then just do it less next month. Me personally, I haven't really like worried about how much I masturbate on the days that I do. It's either a day that you didn't masturbate or it's a day that you did. So, you know, unfortunately yesterday I masturbated 5 times. That's not great, but you know what? Like, it's already hard enough as it is. When you failed, you fail. On the days that you're gonna fail, maybe try to like put it off as long as you can, and then just do it once at night before bed, and then get right back on. But at the end of the day, a failure is a failure, so don't beat yourself up too hard when you fail. Now, I think that you're going to have to face that depression. You're going to have to face that depression of when you fail, and I think where it comes from is the feeling of defeat, because you're about to get consumed back into the demon. What I found is that depression comes when you basically know that you're going to go right back to your old habits, and it's going to take you a while to get back on a streak. So you're going to have to confront that depression, and I'll just say, you know, just tell yourself it's okay. The last time I went through it, I was in the bath. I was like drawing a bath, not feeling great. And then when I was in the bath, it just started sinking in. It's like, okay, wow, I feel like dog shit. But push through, man. Make the decision to stop. Stick to it. Chances are a lot of people aren't ready. And now I'll just kind of randomly insert in here, because like I said, I've been putting this video off. There's a lot of things that I wanted to say. I haven't even like gotten to the spiritual aspects and talking about brahmacharya. Okay, yeah, brahmacharya. But anyway, we'll get to that. I just wanted to have that word ready to read. I just wanted to throw in there randomly that if you have anxiety or depression, I'm pretty confident that the cure is no weed, no alcohol, no drugs. Really take a look at who you're hanging out with, which kind of goes along, like, you know, if you are smoking a lot of weed, if you have a lot of friends who smoke weed, that's what you do with your friends, party and smoke weed. And then pornography and masturbation. So, and it's just funny how society works, because for a lot of people, especially if you have that kind of social life like I used to have, where you regularly are partying, taking drugs, smoking weed, drinking, you're probably just going to be like, especially if you're young, like, no, I can't. I have to go out. I have to smoke weed. Dude, weed. I love drinking. My whole thing is just like, you know, if you're thinking about like getting on antidepressants, stop drinking. Like, you're literally, I'm sorry, you're an idiot if you get on antidepressants and you're not even going to make any attempt to stop drinking. So, yeah, just get sober, get off drugs, go to church, get rid of the pornography and masturbation, and then see how you feel after that, man. That's basically the cure for depression. That's basically the cure for a lot of mental illness. I got interesting ideas for my next video, where I'll probably go more into like demonic oppression, demonic possession, demonic gateways. This is all theology of the Catholic Church. that when you are leaving sin in your life, I mean, the Catholic Church tells you that you shouldn't smoke weed, and obviously you shouldn't masturbate and look at pornography. When you leave these things in your life, you're opening demonic gateways. And that can also, I mean, you'll hear normies say all the time, like, oh my gosh, can you believe before psychology people used to think that mental illness was just demons? Well, that's basically what I'm going to be covering in one of my next videos, because it was, and it is. Especially the really bad stuff, like schizophrenia. It's demonic, and we're living in a world that has made us forget about the demonic, and it's still very much there, and is screwing people up, especially because they're filling their lives with pornography, masturbation, drugs, and so there you go. So there's a lot of useful information there in that first 26 minutes. And the last thing that I wanted to cover is pretty simple, and it's just a lot of people, when they're looking for something, they end up in the New Age. They end up in Eastern spirituality. It's so common in the West now to reject Christianity in favor of Eastern mysticism, Hinduism or Buddhism. And when it comes to semen retention, it's funny how it all kind of comes down to this perspective. And it's also frustrating and funny, not necessarily being the best term, but it is kind of funny how much flack Catholics have gotten. It's such just a mind frick. You see Comedy Central making fun of like Veggie Tales for telling kids not to masturbate, and Comedy Central making fun of Catholics for saying that you're going to go to hell if you masturbate. But then these same people who grow up watching Comedy Central and laughing at Christians for thinking there's a problem with masturbation, these same people end up getting sucked into spirituality and the New Age and Hinduism and Buddhism. And what I'm going to say is that, and this is something that makes a lot of Christians nervous, but I've been thinking about this stuff for such a long time, and I've brought it up on my channel a number of times, is that there's a lot of overlaps. I mean, people know that there's a lot of overlaps between Christianity and many other religions, and there's a number of things that happen. I mean, you have your perennialists who say that there is this divine truth scattered throughout all religions. I've told people, again recently, that I used to be called the perennial Stoic. I've studied some of the perennial philosophers. Julius Evola was kind of considered a perennialist. Frigith Shuan, I don't remember much of his work, but actually Ranguinon's book, The Reign of Quantity. I actually have that book sitting right here. I took it off the shelf because I just think this is a great book to read. It's the book that actually got me out of the occult. Occultism basically led me to Julius Evola, which led me to perennial philosophy, which led me to Ranguinon's The Reign of Quantity, which talks about like pseudo magic, pseudo tradition, pseudo initiation. How when you're just like some Reddit, 4chan, X tier wizards forums, message boards, armchair occultist, like all you're really doing is attracting demons into your life. And this is what Christians will say too. You're either like with something, you're either with a tradition, like usually involving being a part of whatever, a coven or Freemasonry or lodges. Like you're either with an organized tradition of ceremonial magic and you're being taught a real tradition, or you're just in this weird in-between world where I kind of just imagine there's like your local demonic entities and they're just kind of bored. It's like, hey, what do you want to do today? I don't know. It's like freak some people out. And then they see you in your apartment trying to do black magic from some crap that you read on X. It's like, hey, look at this guy. He's messing with tarot cards and a scrying mirror. Like, hey, let's make him think that he's like some grand wizard. You know what I mean? Like, you might be trying to contact some sort of an entity, and you contact something, like you just contact whatever's in your local area, because all you're really doing is inviting demonic elements to come mess with you. So you're inviting the occult into your life, for lack of a better term, when you mess with the occult. And I'm not telling you to like join organized ceremonial magic or become a Freemason, but basically what it is like you're either with Christ or you're with the real deal ceremonial magic, a real tradition, or you're just kind of like screwing around and you're basically inviting demons to come possess you and screw with you. And I learned that in a very organized, well-spoken way from Ranguinon's The Reign of Quantity, and that was really the beginning of me. Because what some of the perennial philosophers tell you to do is just pick a tradition and stick with it. And what happened with me is it unfolded organically to where it's like, okay, I'm not just like picking to be a Christian. I actually believe this. Like, this is the real deal. Jesus Christ is God made flesh. And anyway, I'm kind of rambling. We've basically gotten through this video. This is a lot of information. This is a lot of different tangents. I want my coming videos to be a lot more informative. I think we're ready to just stop reminiscing on women and, you know, feeling dejected from society and whatever. And I got a lot of topics to cover, and we're going to start getting more woke again around here. But it starts here with semen retention. This is a big deal. And the point that I'm trying to work around to is I'm feeling very spiritual lately, but my spirituality is trying to achieve sainthood, trying to ascend in sainthood to receive the Holy Spirit. And I'm not going to say that's the same as being a yogi, because it's definitely not. But you get these people who are so attracted to New Age and Eastern mysticism, and I would say, like, don't be afraid to study that stuff. Don't even be afraid to feel like you can learn things. You know, I've been watching this guy, Alchemy something. Oh, come on. Okay. Brahmacharya. Just remember that I said that. Okay. Oh, yeah. This guy's got 3 channels. Transcending Shadows, Spiritual Renaissance, and then something Alchemy. Anyway, that's 2 of his. Okay, so that's 2 of his channels. But the point is that you can watch these like spiritual guru guys, and some of them are very wise, and they'll teach a lot of things that you can put to use, you know, because there's a lot of overlaps. And what I'm trying to leave you with here is that the process of like following the Eightfold Path of Buddhism or becoming a yogi in one of the like the various paths in Hinduism, like, man, there's sure a lot to learn about Hinduism. There's like Brahmacharya, blah blah, whatever. I can never remember what it's called. That's why I had to. Brahmacharya. There's Brahmacharya. That's the path of semen retention, and that comes from like Brahma. And then there's Vaishnavism, which I was discussing with that Neoplatonist guy on my channel a while ago. It's a shame, you know, me and him ended up butting heads and having the debate. If you can be respectful here, you know, I can respect you, you can respect me, but when you put your foot down and say, listen, bro, like, you believe in a false god, you believe in a Jewish desert god, and you try to bully me, it can't happen, man. We're going to butt heads, and I'm going to try to tell you why you're wrong. And that's just kind of the way it's going to be. But, what it really comes down to, like, with where I disagree on Hinduism, is your concept of the universe and your concept of God. I think it's very confusing. Like, they say that there are many gods, and you can kind of just like worship any god you want, and then, you know, we're all pieces of God, and we're trying to like remember that we're just God experiencing life. And I don't believe that at all. But in terms of like the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, it's interesting. Look into it. I found this one guy who tried to say that the 8 Beatitudes of Christ were like the same as the Eightfold Path of Buddhism. It's definitely not, but it's very similar. You know, off the top of my head, like, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the poor of spirit, blessed are those who mourn, blessed are those who are persecuted for justice, blessed are those who seek justice. It's a very, like, humbled and just refined, not arrogant, not overbearing way of being, that when you kind of visualize this character that Jesus is telling you to be, you might think of somebody who's like a meditating Eastern kind of a guy. So there's not really that much more to say about this. This video's going on to 40 minutes, but the point is that sainthood and being a yogi and following this like metaphysical yogi Eastern spiritual path, it's not that different. Sainthood is better. Sainthood is the real spiritual path. And the two paths in Catholicism is you're either going to get married or you're not. And if you're not, then you should not be fornicating. You should not be expelling your seed at all. If it's not going into your wife with the possibility of creating children, it should not be happening. And by the way, learning about family planning, it's really not that big of a deal. You know, your wife gets checked out by a doctor, you figure out when her egg cycle is or whatever, and I think maybe there's like eight days during the month, something like that, you know, if you don't want to get pregnant, you shouldn't have sex. But it's really not that big of a deal. I could definitely imagine having a marriage involving no birth control and just doing family planning. But anyway, that's clearly not what's happening in my life right now. And what it comes down to, guys, I wasn't able to really like articulate this thought. It's just funny how it's looked at. Like, in brahmacharyaism, I just can't get over the fact that I can't say that word right, bro. In brahmacharya, you focus on the powers that you get and the benefits that you get from retaining the seed. And in Catholicism, you focus on how it's a sin to masturbate. I really can't deny that there is a lot of guilt in Catholicism. And you can kind of like dodge that, or, you know, just don't sin. Just don't sin. And when you do, realize that most people do. And kind of the picture that I paint on the world when I think of the spiritual path of becoming a saint and achieving sainthood is people have original sin. People are tainted by sin. Most people aren't doing it. Most people aren't on the path. Most people are in sinful, fornication-full, you know, worldly relationships. Most people are masturbating and watching pornography, and it's hurting them, and it's holding them back, and they're not developing, and they're depressed, and they're on drugs. And you get benefits from removing sin from your life. Because I think a lot of the times the impression that people get is, again, in brahmacharyaism, you are ascending spiritually and obtaining benefits from removing masturbation, whereas in Catholicism, you're just getting whipped by a ruler from a nun if you masturbate, and there's no benefits. But it's the same. They're both achieving the same end, and if there are benefits, which there are, you will receive those benefits. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, be a saint. Follow the straight and narrow path towards sainthood. Accept Christ. Be a Catholic. Read the compendium and follow that path, because in my humble opinion, it is better than Hinduism, it's better than trying to be a yogi. But you can also study these things. I mean, there's absolutely no harm. I find myself watching a lot of these spiritual gurus, and I can understand and be in that place where it's like, I like this vibe of this guy in the woods talking about his diet and talking about semen retention, and you know, he has a little bit of a different perspective than I do. I also watch Catholic monks. It's definitely fascinating to study Christian mysticism, or you know, just like holy orders, Dominicans and Franciscan mysticism and these kind of things. I definitely want to have some conversations with monks as time goes on, because, you know, maybe I am the kind of guy who could think about joining a holy order someday. But I think that's the best I can do for articulating that thought, you guys. Part of me was thinking this video was only going to be like 10 minutes, but I guess that's kind of the theme of my channel. So, in conclusion, the 3 T's: turn around, get right back on the horse. Once you get to the point where you're not masturbating 2 days in a row anymore, you're just, you know, just keep going. Don't beat yourself up. Like, that's the most important goal. That is when you know you're ready to start taking a deep breath and trying to get those long streaks going. I'm basically hoping that, you know, the streak that I'm about to start, it just keeps going, you know, and I smash my old record of 9 days and I just start ascending, guys. And as far as the benefits, I wouldn't worry about attracting women. Like, you are trying to get over sexual desire. You're trying to prove Freud wrong. Freud's view of the world, another thing that's going to be covered in my next video, it's basically looking at people like they are the human animal in a godless world who evolved from apes, not men created in the image of God, capable of ascending through sainthood, becoming something better. That, in like your stereotypical concept of spiritual evolution, looks very much like a yogi. And I'm just trying to say that in a way that doesn't freak out Christians and make them think, oh, there he goes, he's going into some weird Christian New Age nonsense. No, I'm just a Catholic. I'm following real Catholicism and trying to remain in a state of grace and remove sin out of my life, because that's how you ascend on the path of sainthood. And ultimately, you're going to have a much more kind of grounded, regular life if you're choosing the path of marriage, because then you're going to have to provide for your family. But I'm starting to think that, and you know, you can switch, you can spiritually develop on the path of celibacy and chastity outside of marriage, and then maybe find a great woman and get married and then just switch paths. But it's like, you have that weird attachment to like Hinduism and Buddhism. Study it, learn from it. There's nothing wrong with it. The example that I gave is like, a lot of movies you watch aren't Christian, and oh, you can't watch that movie because it's not Christian. Oh, you can't play that video game because it's not Christian. I mean, how can you like learn from some red pill YouTuber who's not a Christian, but you're not allowed to learn from Hinduism or Buddhism? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm very confident in my faith and I know the differences, and I guess what it comes down to is if you're not studied enough, you might not know enough about your own faith, and you might kind of get like twisted and screwed up, getting tangled up in studying another faith because you don't know your own faith enough. But I know the rules of the Bible and what the real God teaches. Christ is the master. Christ is the highest teacher and the highest master. But, you know, way down the line, somebody like Coach Red Pill, rest in peace, or Elliot Hulse is a teacher. So why couldn't Buddha be a teacher somewhere in the middle? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? Maybe Krishna was right a couple of times. Maybe there's a couple of things that you can learn. Reconciling meditation is something that I've been trying to do for a very long time. In my video, Leaving the Matrix, I covered that a little bit. Hesychasm, saying the Jesus Prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. I read a book, The Pilgrim's Journey, where he recommended just shortening it to Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. That's basically I'm brain farting again. What's that thing where you say the same? A mantra. They basically use that as a mantra. So basically, mantra meditation is practiced in Eastern Christianity. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of Protestants don't like that. But it's fine. I mean, it's a positive... It's a positive thing, guys. I'm feeling very serene lately. I'm feeling new levels of peace. I can tell you that the lows that I feel lately are just higher than they've ever been. Like, I have a new home base. You know, I have a new center. On an average day that isn't good or bad, I'm happier than I was in the past. And I've made a lot of progress. I've cut out weed. Alcohol wasn't really a thing. Cigarettes wasn't on. I was on and off with the cigarettes. It's been out. And now I'm starting to conquer pornography and masturbation. This is the path. That's what I have to say about it, guys. You've seen me, you know, poke at it a little bit, and then I give up and I don't talk about it and I go back to my old habits. I've done everything else there is to do. Just like with the drumming, it's like, okay, I kind of wish that 2 years ago or whatever, I would have done this harder method of improving my time with the metronome. But here I am now. There's nothing left to do other than this. I've 100%ed the levels previous to here. You might as well max out the Midgar Zolom because we're leveled up. A lot of people beat this game without level grinding this much, but it's time. It's time, my friends. And I don't mean to, like, talk crap or put anybody down, but a lot of people probably just aren't ready for this yet. A lot of you guys aren't ready to quit weed yet. Maybe you just say, hey, you know what? I don't even want to quit weed. A lot of you guys don't want to be Christians. This is my path. It's the path of sainthood. Again, no disrespect. It's similar to being a yogi. You shouldn't be weirded out by saying that. I mean, it's not going to be similar if you're getting married and you have a job, but if you're on the more Christian mystic path that involves chastity, yeah, you could divide your time between reading the Bible, watching debates about the Bible, and watching Catholic channels and different Catholic monks from different holy orders. And then if you want to watch some spiritual guru kind of people, like this guy that I'm watching, Spiritual Renaissance or Alchemy, whatever, I can't remember. I'll post some of the stuff in the description. Whew. But that's my video about semen retention, you guys. 1 billion people talk about this topic. It took me a long time to make this video because I was trying to figure out how to kind of organize all this information. It's all in there somewhere. Hopefully when I watch this, like, the camera angle isn't, like, terrible. The camera's just been in my face the whole time, and hopefully this works for you guys. So that's the path. I do think it's for everybody. What's funny is this kind of reminds me of a more expanded version of the Leaving the Matrix video. This is it. You got depression, you got anxiety, cut the drugs, cut the pot, cut the booze, stop looking at porn, stop looking at masturbation. And the last thing I'll mention is that if you're a fornicator, like if you're a Chad or whatever, and you have a lot of women in your life doing all the work, like hitting you up, like, hey, can I come over? That's something that I can't even really relate to, but that's sin. And a lot of the people who talk about NoFap and semen retention is some dude bro red pill stuff where you're just trying to figure out how to get laid, and they have all this bullcrap pseudoscience like, oh, it's actually good for you to regularly get laid, like masturbation and having sex are a lot different. And, you know, in a worldly way, there's probably some truth to that, but from like the brahmacharya perspective, it's not. Like, semen retention means retaining your semen, and there's benefits to it. And I think the goal, guys, is to make it beyond 2 weeks. Because once you get past 2 weeks, I've never been there, you start feeling like real benefits. Learn to live inside of that fire, okay? This kind of spiritual alchemy that's taking place. Basically, when you feel all jittery and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't hold it anymore, that's like a fire burning away your weakness, burning away your impurity. The yogis would say it's burning away your karma. And then just think about the concept of karma. It's like karma is doing wrong. Well, what's wrong? Sin. If anything, Christians just have a way better idea of what it means to do wrong. So, yeah, don't be afraid to study more spirituality, but just make sure you know your own faith before that, so you can pick out the BS, and so you can just kind of learn and compare and be like, oh wow, this is a place that my faith really differs from Hinduism. They believe in the eternally existing universe in Hinduism, which is very similar to modern science and paganism in general. So I know who my God is. Christ is firmly at the top. Christ is the master. Christ is God, the Lord. And yeah, I'm excited to go down this spiritual path, guys. So I've definitely rambled a lot. That's it. God bless. I hope this information finds you well, and I will see you for the next one. We're leveling up, fam. Peace out. God bless.